The fire burned low in the stone hearth. September wind rattled the cabin windows. Outside Montana, darkness pressed against the glass like something alive waiting. Caleb Brennan sat in his chair, fingers wrapped around a tin cup of whiskey. His grandson James stood by the mantel, too nervous to sit. The boy was 19, tall and lean, with the restless energy of youth about to be tested. Tomorrow morning he would board the train. By week's end he would be in uniform. After that, who could say? The Philippines. War. Death, maybe. Caleb watched the firelight play across the boy's face. He saw fear there. Good. Fear meant the boy still had sense for us. You scared? Caleb asked. James swallowed. Some. Don't be ashamed of it. Caleb took a slow sip, let the burn settle. Year I turned 38, when they came for us, I was scared half to death. But there was a woman taught me something that fall. Taught me courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when your hands shake. James turned from the fire. Grandma Sarah. No, Sarah passed before this. I'm talking about Maggie, the woman I never planned to rescue, the woman my daughters chose to be their new mother. The boy's eyes widened. He had heard pieces of this story, fragments whispered at family gatherings, but never the whole truth. Caleb set down his cup. His voice dropped into that particular register old men use when memory becomes more real than the present. This isn't a story about war or hero's son. It's about choosing family when everything's broken, about standing your ground when running would be easier, about a woman in black who taught me the most important lesson I ever learned. He poured another measure of whiskey. The liquid caught the light amber and gold. Fall of 1872. I was 38, widower 3 years. Iris was 9, Rose was 6, and I was about to meet a nun who would change everything. James pulled a chair closer. The wind outside grew stronger. It started like any other day, Caleb said. I took my daughters to the trading caravan. His voice shifted, sliding into the past like a man stepping into cold water. The present faded. The fire dimmed, and the story began. The caravan. The plains north of Fort Bridger carried a late-season chill that October evening. Frost formed in patches where sunlight never reached, white fingers creeping across shadowed ground. Caleb Brennan guided his wagon along the dirt track at a steady pace, watching the horizon with the practiced eye of a man who had scouted for cavalry units in harder times. His daughters sat close together on the seat. Iris, 9 years old, kept her chin tucked into the wool blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Rose, 6 and smaller, watched the lanterns of the traveling supply caravan ahead with quiet interest. The lights bobbed and swayed like fireflies in the gathering dusk. Caleb had been a widower for 3 years. Since the day Sarah died, bringing Rose into the world, his life had narrowed to a single path built on responsibility. He woke early, checked fences, fed cattle, prepared meals, kept his daughters safe. He avoided unnecessary talk, avoided town gatherings, avoided anything that pulled his focus from the work of keeping his small ranch alive. He had served as an Army scout before becoming a family man. Although he left that life behind, after refusing an order that still weighed on him, the habit stayed. Caution, observation, reading the land for signs of danger. The wagon creaked as it rolled over frozen ruts. Rose shifted under her blanket, pressing closer to her sister's warmth. Iris put an arm around her without being asked. Good girls, both of them, learning to survive without a mother, learning to be strong. The caravan spread across a clearing near the tree line. Lanterns hung from wagon frames, casting unsteady light over crates of tools, sacks of beans, folded blankets, coiled rope. Men shouted prices. Others hammered shut lids or tied down loads for the next leg of their journey. Horses shifted on the far end, their hooves pressing into cold dirt. Steam rose from their nostrils in slow clouds. Caleb pulled the wagon to a stop at the edge of the activity. He climbed down slowly, feeling the tightness in his back from a week of hard labor. His daughter stayed on the seat, watching everything with wide eyes. He unloaded the furs he intended to trade. Marten and beaver taken from his trap lines over the past month. The pelts were good quality, well cured. The caravan leader, a thick man named Silas Cobb, counted them with quick nods and grunts of approval. Fine work, Brennan, Silas said. Pick whatever you need in return. Caleb moved toward a row of tools laid out for inspection. He needed hinges for the barn door. The wind that came down from the mountain passes had warped the frame, and the old iron had finally cracked. He tested a new hinge with his thumb, weighing whether it would stand up to another winter. His mind ran ahead to the work waiting at home. Split more wood, repair Rose's coat sleeve, check the stovepipe before snow settled for good. The list never ended. But the work was simple, predictable, safe. That was when he heard it. A strained breath, not loud but carrying a particular tension that made him look up. The sound came from somewhere behind the tool crates. Caleb's hands stilled on the hinge. His eyes tracked toward the source. Iris heard it too. She leaned forward on the wagon seat blanket, slipping from her shoulders. Rose's small hand tightened around her sister's wrist. Caleb stepped around the crates, moving carefully. Near the back of the caravan, beside two tired horses, a young woman stood with rope around her wrists. The binding was loose, but it was still rope, still restraint. Her dress was torn across one shoulder. The fabric, he realized, was black. Not the simple black of mourning or work clothes. This was the formal black of religious orders. A nun's habit, though damaged and dirty. Dirt marked her forearms and the edges of her clothing. Beadwork hung unevenly where the fabric had ripped. Her posture showed exhaustion. Legs braced just enough to stay upright, arms held close, breathing shallow. She watched the ground but tracked movement around her with small, precise shifts of her eyes. When a caravan handler pushed a crate aside without looking, she stepped back quickly. The motion was automatic, defensive, like someone expecting to be struck. Caleb observed her carefully. No signs of aggression, no resistance. She looked like someone who had traveled too far without rest, someone who had reached the limit of what her body could endure. He turned back to the tools, told himself he had no reason to get involved. He needed stability for his daughters. Bringing in a stranger, especially one who had been passed through caravans like cargo, was not part of his plan. Silas walked over, rubbing his hands together against the cold. "You brought good furs, Brennan. Pick whatever you want." Caleb gestured toward the box of hinges. "These will work." Silas nodded, ready to finalize the deal. Then a small voice stopped everything. "She looks cold." Hannah's whisper, soft but clear. Caleb turned. Both daughters were looking past him toward the woman in black. Iris spoke next, steadier. "We want her." Caleb felt something pull tight in his chest. "What?" Rose climbed down from the wagon, her feet hitting the ground with purpose. She walked to her father and took his hand. "We want that woman, as our mama." The words hung in the cold air. Caleb stared at his daughters. Their expressions were open, serious, afraid for the woman. Not asking for a toy or a treat, asking for something they genuinely believed they needed. He looked back at the woman in black. She had not heard the girls. She stood with the same drawn posture, hands trembling lightly at her sides, face showing the strain of trying to remain upright. Caleb's throat tightened. He looked at Silas. "Why is she tied?" Silas shrugged like none of it mattered. "Picked her up after a raid in the foothills. 40 miles north. Catholic mission got hit. Sisters killed or taken. She was alone when we found her, half dead from exposure. We don't have time for trouble. If you want her, take her. Saves us hauling her to the next stop." The casual tone made something cold settle in Caleb's gut. He disliked the way Silas spoke about her, like she was livestock, like she was an object rather than a person who had survived something terrible. Most of all, he disliked the faint memory it stirred. Another woman he once failed to help during his army days. A moment he had never spoken about to anyone. A choice that still haunted him. He stepped around the crates and approached the woman slowly, made sure she could see his hands. She did not back away, did not lift her chin, just watched him with tired, guarded eyes. Caleb drew a small knife from his belt, showed it to her first, then spoke quietly. "I'm cutting the rope. You're safe." He placed the blade carefully against the cord and sliced through it. The rope fell to the ground. She did not rub her wrists, simply lowered her hands, unsure of what came next. Her breathing changed slightly, not easier yet, but no longer held so tight. Caleb lifted his chin toward the wagon. "Come with us. You won't be hurt." Her eyes met his for the first time. He saw fear mixed with uncertainty, but also something else. An awareness that she no longer had the strength to walk anywhere on her own. She stepped toward the wagon, slowly using the side rail for balance. As she climbed up, Iris moved aside immediately. Rose offered a blanket with both hands, her small face solemn. The woman accepted it without lifting her gaze, pulled it tightly around her shoulders. Caleb returned to the driver's seat, took a steady breath, snapped the reins gently. The horses began pulling the wagon away from the caravan. The night air grew colder as they traveled. The sound of wheels blended with the distant cry of a coyote. No one spoke. The only movement came from the woman adjusting the blanket and the girls watching her with quiet concern. Caleb kept his eyes on the road. His mind turned through the consequences of what he had just done. He did not regret it, but he understood the weight of it. He had brought a stranger into his home, a woman whose past he did not yet know, a woman who had already endured more than most men could survive. His daughters had acted out of instinct. They did not understand the complexities he now had to navigate. But as the plane stretched ahead and the lights of the caravan disappeared behind them, Caleb accepted the simple truth settling inside him. Leaving her there had never been an option he could live with. The homestead. The wagon reached the Brennan homestead long after the last daylight faded. The cabin's outline appeared first as a dark shape against the wide plains, then sharpened as the horses approached the corral. A single lantern burned near the porch, its light steady in the still air. Caleb pulled the reins gently, bringing the team to a halt. The girls climbed down with practiced care, their boots hitting the ground softly. The woman in black remained seated for a moment. She examined the cabin with guarded caution, unsure how to enter a place that was not hers. Caleb stepped to her side. "You can come inside, it's warmer there." His voice remained calm. No pressure, no expectation. She reacted with a small nod, then stood carefully adjusting the blanket around her shoulders before stepping down from the wagon. Her movements were slow. Not from reluctance, but from fatigue so deep that even standing required concentration. Inside, warmth spread from the iron stove. Iris lit an extra lantern, placing it on the table. Rose moved blankets from a chair to make space. The interior was tidy, two small beds pushed against the far wall, Caleb's cot near the stove, shelves lined with jars, tools stacked under the window. Life here was simple, efficient, built on routines that left no time for clutter. The woman hesitated at the doorway. The scent of wood smoke and cooked beans filled the air, a smell she recognized but had not felt safe around in weeks. Caleb noticed her uncertainty, stepped aside so she would not feel cornered. She entered slowly, took in every detail, the room, the stove, the distance to the door, weighing whether the quiet inside was genuine or temporary. Caleb set a pot on the stove. "There's food left from earlier. It's not much, but it's warm." She did not answer. Her eyes followed the steam rising from the pot. Hunger pulled at her, but she waited, unsure if she had permission to approach the table. Rose placed a tin cup on the bench and filled it with water. She looked at the woman without fear. "You can drink. It's clean." The woman accepted the cup carefully. Her fingers shook as she lifted it. The first sip steadied her breathing. The second eased the tension in her shoulders. Iris sat on the edge of her bed watching closely, trying to understand how someone could look so strong and so unsteady at the same time. "What's your name?" Iris asked quietly. The woman lowered the cup, hesitated before answering. "Sister Margaret Walsh." Her voice was low, roughened from days of silence. "But you can call me Maggie." Caleb stirred the pot, listening. He did not turn, did not want her to feel scrutinized. Iris tilted her head. "Sister like a nun's sister." Maggie nodded slowly. The words settled over the room like a weight. Caleb's hand stilled on the spoon. His daughters did not understand what it meant. But he did. Vows, celibacy, obedience to the church. A life dedicated to God, not to family. Rose, innocent and unbothered, smiled. "That's a pretty name, Maggie." Caleb served a small bowl of beans and set it on the table. Did not push it toward her, just left it there. Maggie stepped forward only when she felt certain no one expected anything except for her to eat. While she ate, Caleb allowed himself to study her more closely. Her face held bruises that were fading but still visible. Her arms showed thin marks from rope that had been tied too often in recent days. She sat straight even when exhausted, as though lowering her posture would be a sign of weakness she could not afford. He asked nothing, not yet. He did not want to force her to relive anything on the first night. The girls eventually settled into their beds. Rose kept watching Maggie with half-closed eyes, as though afraid she might disappear if she looked away. Iris whispered something to her sister, then pulled the blankets up to her chin. Caleb stood by the stove, rubbing warmth into his hands. He glanced at Maggie's thin clothing, at the torn fabric near her shoulder, at the way she kept her feet close together for warmth. He opened a chest near his cot and took out a folded wool shawl, placed it on the corner of the table. "You can use this tonight. The nights get colder out here." She stared at the shawl for a moment, unsure whether accepting it meant some obligation she did not understand. When she finally reached for it, her movements were slow, testing whether the offer would be withdrawn. Caleb pointed to the far corner of the cabin where he had placed a spare blanket on the floor earlier. "You'll sleep there. It's not much, but it's safe." The word safe made something shift in her expression. Not relief, but a small release in the lines around her mouth, a visible acknowledgement that she understood the difference between temporary shelter and genuine refuge. Maggie sat on the blanket adjusting the borrowed shawl. She scanned the cabin a final time. Door, window, stove, distance to the girls, creating a map she needed for rest. Caleb poured himself a small amount of water and stood in the quiet room, aware of her presence in a way he had not expected. Her silence did not press into the space. It settled, cautious and uncertain, but without threat. He spoke once more before putting out the lantern. "No one here will ever hurt you. That's the only rule this home has." She lifted her eyes. She did not thank him, did not smile, but the tension in her posture eased a fraction, enough to show she had heard him clearly. When the lantern went dark, the room filled with the soft breathing of two children and the crackling of the stove. Maggie lay awake a long time, listening for danger out of habit. Caleb lay awake too, listening to her adjust her blanket and settle into a space she had not asked for but needed. Neither spoke again, but the uneasy silence slowly changed shape. Something no longer built on fear, but on the first thin layer of trust forming between strangers who needed more from each other than they knew how to say. Morning light. A pale strip of light appeared along the eastern horizon before anyone spoke. The stove had burned low during the night, leaving a faint warmth that clung to the cabin's wood walls. Caleb rose first, careful not to wake the girls. He moved with practiced quiet, pulling on his boots, adjusting his coat, checking the firebox to judge how much kindling he needed. The air inside held the cold of early dawn, enough to make his breath show when he leaned forward. Maggie stirred in the corner, lifted her head slightly but did not sit up. She looked around with the alertness of someone who had spent many nights in unsafe places and did not yet trust morning light. Her blanket had slipped halfway down. She pulled it back around her shoulders without meeting Caleb's eyes. He nodded once, acknowledging her presence without forcing conversation, then stepped outside. Frost covered the ground in a thin layer that cracked softly beneath his boots. The horses stood near the fence, breath rising in slow clouds. He crossed the yard to the pump, working the handle until cold water splashed against the metal bucket. The temperature stung his hands, but he kept moving. The animals needed water before the sun warmed the day. By the time he stepped back inside, Iris was awake, hair-messy blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She rubbed her eyes and looked toward Maggie before saying anything. "Did you sleep?" Iris asked quietly. Maggie paused. "Enough." Her answer was short but genuine, surprising even to her. It had been the first night in weeks where she had not been tied, shoved, or forced to flee. Rose woke next, tucked her feet beneath her body as she sat up. She scanned the room, saw Maggie still there, and relaxed. Rose's relief carried a softness that did not need words. She simply rose and moved to help her father without hesitation. Caleb set the pot on the stove and poured in water. The crackle of kindling replaced silence as he worked. Maggie watched him, not out of suspicion, but out of a need to understand the rhythms of this place. She did not know what was expected of her yet, studied every movement for clues. She rose slowly, holding the blanket around her body with one hand. Her legs ached from days of travel and nights spent in harsh conditions. She stepped toward the table, but kept a respectful distance from the stove. Caleb turned slightly when he noticed. "You can sit if you want. The room warms faster if no one stands near the door." She obeyed, lowered herself onto the nearest chair. The wood was worn smooth by years of use. Her fingers gripped the edge as she adjusted her posture. She did not want to seem idle, But she also did not know which task she was allowed to touch. Iris brought her a tin cup of warm water. It helps in the morning. Maggie accepted it with both hands, felt heat seep into her fingers. She nodded in thanks but did not speak. Caleb watched from the stove. He saw the guarded way Maggie held herself, the quick glances toward the windows, the small movements that revealed she was still ready to run if a danger appeared. He did not tell her she was safe. He had said that once already. Trust took time, and he would not press her for anything she was not ready to give. Breakfast was simple. Porridge stirred until thick, eaten without ceremony. Rose swung her legs beneath the bench while she chewed. Iris ate more slowly, observing Maggie with thoughtful interest. Halfway through the meal, Maggie set her bowl down and spoke softly. I can work. Caleb lifted his eyes. You don't have to today. She shook her head. I want to help. The words carried determination she had not shown the night before. He considered her for a moment. She needed purpose as much as she needed rest. He understood that. A person stripped of everything held on to responsibility as a way to recover a sense of self. We'll go slow, he said, just the simple things. Maggie nodded once, grateful her offer had been accepted, but relieved she would not be pushed too hard. After breakfast, the girls bundled into their coats to gather eggs from the chicken coop. Maggie followed them outside, the shawl tight around her shoulders. The yard looked different in daylight. Wide pasture, low hills in the distance, a small corral beside the barn. She paused to take it in, grounding herself in a space that was no longer hostile. Iris held the coop door open. Watch your step, the ground's slick. Maggie stepped carefully, noted the uneven frost. Rose crouched near the nesting boxes, lifting one egg at a time with serious concentration. Maggie watched the girls work, observed their teamwork, their ease with the land, their comfort despite the cold. For the first time since arriving, she felt a faint shift inside her, an awareness that she was standing in a place where children moved without fear. Caleb approached from the barn carrying a small rake. The corral needs clearing, only if you feel steady enough. Maggie nodded. I can do that. She took the rake, tested its weight, then walked toward the corral gate. Her steps were measured but not weak. The cold air sharpened her senses, and the simple task gave her a direction she had not had in weeks. Caleb watched her briefly, then returned to his work without hovering. As she raked, she listened to the quiet around her. Wind brushed through dry grass. Chickens clucked near the coop. The girls laughed about something unexpected. Caleb hammered a loose board on the fence with steady rhythm. These were new sounds, sounds of a place where people lived without running. When she finished, she rested both hands on the rake. Catching her breath, Caleb walked over and examined her work with a nod. You did well, thank you. His voice carried no judgment, only acknowledgement. She straightened, surprised by how much those two simple words mattered. Before she could answer, Rose tugged at her sleeve. We want to show you the creek later. It's not far. Maggie looked down at the little girl's hopeful expression. Her instinct was to stay distant. Attachment complicated survival. Yet Rose's invitation was gentle, without expectation, and something in Maggie's chest eased at the thought of walking somewhere without being pushed or dragged. She nodded. All right, Rose grinned, running to tell Iris. Caleb watched the exchange quietly, understanding more than he said. Maggie was not just recovering strength. She was beginning to allow the idea of belonging to form, even if she did not recognize it yet. The morning moved on, and for the first time since joining the Brennan family, Maggie felt the weight of fear lift just enough for her lungs to fill fully. It was not safety she believed in yet. It was possibility, shadows in the pines. The afternoon settled over the Brennan ranch with a muted calm. The frost had melted into thin streaks of water along the fence posts. The ground softened slightly under the late-day sun. Caleb finished repairing a loose shutter on the cabin and set the hammer aside, brushed dust from his gloves. He noticed Maggie standing near the corral, her posture firm but uncertain, as though trying to determine her place in a space that still felt unfamiliar. Iris and Rose sat on a fallen log nearby, whispering to each other about whether Maggie might want help with chores. They wanted to approach her, but hesitated, trying to respect boundaries they did not fully understand. Caleb walked toward Maggie with careful steps, made sure she heard him approach. She turned her head slightly, just enough to acknowledge him without losing sight of the yard. You holding up all right? He asked. She took a moment before answering. I can work more if you need. That's not what I asked. He kept his voice even. I want to know how you're managing today. Maggie took in the question as if it were unfamiliar. No one had asked her how she was in a very long time. I'm adjusting, she said finally. Your home is quiet. He nodded. Quiet can take getting used to. She shifted her weight, eyes moving to the hills in the distance. I haven't stayed anywhere longer than a night for many weeks. You don't need to go anywhere now, Caleb replied. Not unless you choose to. Her response was a small, tense breath. She did not thank him, did not offer reassurances, but something in her expression softened slightly. Less guarded, less braced for the next command. Before either spoke again, Rose ran toward them. Pa! The goat's loose again. She got into the woodpile. Caleb sighed lightly. That animal never learns. Rose looked up at Maggie. Do you want to come help? She listens better when there's more than one person. Maggie glanced at Caleb, not for permission but for clarity. He gave a small nod. Go with her if you feel up to it. Maggie followed the girl toward the barn. The goat bleated loudly near the stacked logs, knocking pieces loose with her horns. Rose circled around, creating a narrow path for Maggie to approach. Maggie crouched slowly, spoke in a low tone that surprised Rose. It was calm, steady, and carried a confidence she had not shown earlier. The goat froze, ears twitching as if weighing whether to bolt. Maggie extended a hand, palm open. After a long moment, the goat stepped toward her. Rose grinned with pride. You're good with animals. Maggie guided the goat back toward the barn, closed the latch firmly behind her. And my people kept horses, she said quietly, and dogs. They listen if you give them time. When she turned, Caleb was watching from across the yard. The simplicity of the moment, the ease with which she handled the goat told him more about her past than any direct question would have revealed. She had lived a life that required patience and skill, one shaped by responsibility rather than fear. Later, while the girls gathered sticks for the evening fire, Caleb approached Maggie again. You want to walk the fence with me? He asked. Storm last week loosened part of the eastern side. I could use an extra pair of eyes. She hesitated, uncertain whether leaving the immediate safety of the cabin yard was wise. He noticed her hesitation and added, we won't go far. Oh, you'll stay inside the ranch the whole time. Maggie nodded once. I can walk. They moved side by side toward the far field, maintaining a respectful distance. Dry grass brushed against their boots. The wind carried the faint scent of pine from the ridge. Neither spoke for several minutes. The silence was not heavy. It was tentative, like two people learning how to exist near one another without strain. Caleb inspected the fence as they walked. A few posts leaned at angles from the storm, but most remained solid. Maggie followed his movements carefully, studied how he checked each section with steady hands. You built this yourself, she said quietly. Most of it, he replied. Neighbors helped with the first stretch. After my wife passed, I finished the rest alone. She absorbed the information with a slow blink. Loss had shaped him too, though he carried it differently than she did. His grief was controlled, folded into his routine. Hers was still raw, sitting close to the surface, unprotected. When they reached the damaged post, Caleb pushed against it to test its strength. It wobbled, but not enough to collapse. I'll reinforce it tomorrow, he said. Won't fall before then. Maggie touched the wood with her fingertips. Her hands were calloused in a way that revealed hard labor, not fragility. I can help with that, she offered. Only if you want to, he said. You're not here to earn your keep. She studied him with a puzzled expression. Men at the caravan said different things. I'm not them, he answered simply. The words carried weight, not dramatic weight. Practical, steady, believable. Maggie lowered her hand from the post and looked toward the cabin where the girls were stacking wood in a crooked pile. She watched them with an expression that held a mixture of caution and warmth, as though she was not sure whether she belonged near them yet, but wanted to understand how belonging worked here. As they walked back, Maggie felt a shift in her chest, a quiet awareness that she had not looked over her shoulder once during the entire walk. She had not listened for threats. She had not prepared escape routes. Her body had undergone a small, unexpected reprieve from survival mode, but that reprieve ended the moment Caleb stopped walking. His hand went up, a silent signal. Maggie froze. Caleb crouched, examining the ground. His jaw tightened. Tracks. fresh. Boot prints pressed deep into the soft earth where frost had melted. "These aren't ours," he said quietly. Maggie knelt beside him, counted the prints. 3 sets, maybe 4, moving in a pattern that circled the property line. "When?" she whispered. "Last night, maybe early this morning." Her pulse quickened. She recognized the behavior. Men who moved at night, who scouted before they struck. Caleb stood slowly, scanned the tree line. Nothing moved, but that meant nothing. "We need to get back," he said. They walked quickly, not running but no longer taking time to examine fence posts. When they reached the cabin, Caleb did not say anything to the girls, just sent them inside with instructions to start preparing supper. Once they were alone again, Maggie spoke. "They were looking." "I know." "For what?" Caleb's eyes met hers. "For weaknesses. For what we have. For who's here." Maggie felt cold settle into her bones. "They're coming back." "Maybe." "Not maybe," she said. "They always come back." Caleb did not argue. He had seen enough in his years as a scout to know she was right. That night he checked the rifle, made sure it was loaded, placed it near the door. Maggie watched him, said nothing. But when the girls fell asleep, she moved her blanket closer to the window, positioned herself where she could see the yard. Caleb noticed, understood. "You don't have to keep watch," he said quietly. "I know." She pulled the blanket tighter. "But I will anyway." He sat at the table, listened to the wind outside. The cabin creaked. Logs settled. Hours passed. Neither of them slept. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the fence line, something moved. Watching. Waiting. Morning came with a stranger riding up the trail. Caleb saw him from the porch. An older man on a gray horse moving slowly through the frost-covered grass. The rider's posture was relaxed but alert. Someone who knew how to approach an isolated homestead without getting shot. Caleb recognized him before he dismounted. Ezra Cole, neighbor from 15 miles north. A man who had trapped these mountains longer than Caleb had been alive. Ezra swung down from his horse with the careful movement of someone whose joints protested cold mornings. He was 55, maybe older. Beard streaked with gray, eyes that missed nothing. "Brennan," Ezra said by way of greeting. "Cole." Caleb stepped off the porch. "Long ride for a social call." "Ain't social." Ezra glanced at the cabin, then back at Caleb. "Heard you picked up a woman at the caravan." Caleb's expression did not change. "Word travels fast." "It does when Turner's gang is in the territory." The name hit like a fist to the gut. Caleb went very still. "Jacob Turner." Ezra nodded. "You know him?" Caleb's jaw tightened. He looked toward the hills, seeing nothing. Seeing everything. Memories he had buried for years suddenly rising like floodwater. "I know him," Caleb said quietly. Inside the cabin, Maggie heard voices. She moved to the window, staying out of sight. Watched the 2 men talking in low tones. Saw the shift in Caleb's posture. The way his shoulders had gone rigid. Something was wrong. Ezra kept talking, his voice carried through the morning air. "Turner's running women, trafficking them to mining camps, brothels up in Montana territory. Been doing it for months." Maggie's breath stopped. Her hands gripped the window frame. The mission, the attack, the screams. "How many men does he have?" Caleb asked. 5 at least, maybe more. Ezra spat into the dirt. "They hit a Catholic mission about 6 weeks back. Killed some nuns. Took others." Maggie felt the room tilt. She steadied herself against the wall. Iris looked up from the table, concerned, crossing her young face. "Miss Maggie, you okay?" Maggie could not answer, could not breathe. Outside, Caleb was asking questions. "What's Turner look like now?" "Tall, scar across his left eyebrow, missing half his pinky finger on the right hand." Caleb closed his eyes. "That's him." "You served together." "Long time ago." Caleb's voice was flat. "Before he went bad." The door opened. Both men turned. Maggie stood in the doorway. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "The mission," she said. "He led the raid." Caleb stared at her. "You're certain? Tall, scar, missing finger." Maggie's hands were shaking now. "I saw him kill Sister Catherine. Shot her when she tried to protect the younger sisters. I can identify him." The words hung in the cold air. Ezra let out a low whistle. Then you're the reason he's still in this territory. Can't leave a witness alive. Caleb's mind was racing. This was not random. Turner would want revenge on him for the old wound between them. And he would want Maggie dead because she could testify. Personal stakes and practical necessity. The worst combination. Get her to Fort Bridger, Ezra said. Army can protect her. We won't make it, Caleb replied. He's too close. He knows she's here. Maggie stepped fully outside. I'll leave, tonight. Draw them away from you and your daughters. No, Iris's voice came from the doorway. The girl stood there, eyes wide with fear. Please don't go. Rose appeared behind her sister, already crying. You can't leave us. Caleb looked at his daughters, then at Maggie, then at the surrounding hills where danger waited. No one's leaving, he said firmly. We stand together. Maggie shook her head. You don't owe me this. Maybe not. Caleb's voice was quiet but absolute. But my daughters love you, and I need you here. The last words surprised him as much as her, but once spoken he knew they were true. Ezra watched this exchange with knowing eyes. I'll spread word, get some men together, but it'll take time. How much time? Caleb asked. 2 days, maybe 3. We might not have 3 days. Ezra nodded. Then you better prepare for the worst. He mounted his horse. Before riding away, he looked down at Caleb. That woman you picked up, she's got fire in her. You chose well. She's the one who chose to stay, Caleb said. After Ezra left, Caleb stood in the yard. Maggie approached slowly. You said you need me here, she said quietly. Why? Caleb did not answer immediately. He looked at his daughters watching from the window, at the cabin he had built with his own hands, at the life he had constructed from grief and determination. Because we're stronger together, he said finally, and because I haven't felt this alive since Sarah died. Maggie's breath caught. She did not know what to say to that. Caleb turned to her. Can you shoot? No. Then it's time you learn. The lessons. The next morning, Caleb set up targets behind the barn, pieces of wood propped against hay bales. He loaded the rifle with practiced efficiency, then handed it to Maggie. She took it carefully. The weight surprised her. It's heavier than I expected. That's good, Caleb said. Means you'll respect it. He positioned himself beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence. Brace the stock against your shoulder. Firm. If you hold it loose, the kickback will knock you flat. Maggie adjusted her stance. The rifle felt foreign in her hands. Wrong. She was a woman of God, a healer, not a killer, but she thought of Sister Catherine, of the younger nun screaming, of Turner's cold eyes as he pulled the trigger. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. You don't have to kill anyone, Caleb said. Just learn to defend yourself. There's a difference. He moved behind her, placed his hands lightly on her shoulders. Square up, both feet planted, breathe. His touch was gentle but firm. Maggie felt heat rise in her face. She tried to focus on the target, on anything except the way his breath stirred her hair. Now look down the barrel. See that notch at the end? Lined it up with the target. She did as he instructed. Her heart hammered in her chest. When you're ready, breathe out slowly. Squeeze the trigger. Don't pull. Squeeze. When Maggie closed her eyes, said a silent prayer, then opened them and aimed. She squeezed. The rifle fired. The kickback was worse than she imagined. The stock slammed into her shoulder. Her feet went backward. She stumbled, nearly falling. Caleb caught her. His arms went around her waist, steadying her. For a moment, neither moved. His hands on her waist, her back against his chest, both breathing hard. Then Maggie pulled away, flustered. From behind the fence, Rose's voice rang out. Miss Maggie almost fell. The little girl was giggling. Iris stood beside her, trying not to smile. Maggie felt her face burn. I'm sorry, I wasn't ready for that. Nobody ever is, Caleb said. His voice was rough. He cleared his throat. Let's try again. This time brace harder. They practiced for an hour. Maggie's shoulder would be bruised tomorrow, but her aim improved. The second shot went wide. The third hit the edge of the target. By the 10th attempt, she struck center. Caleb lowered his rifle, looked at her with something like respect. You're a natural. Maggie stared at the splintered wood, at what her hands had done. I didn't think I could. Most people can do more than they think. He reloaded her rifle. One more for confidence. She raised the weapon, aimed, fired, perfect center. Rose cheered. Iris clapped quietly. Maggie lowered the rifle. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear now, from something else. A realization that she was capable of violence if necessary. That survival had changed her in ways she could not undo. "Thank you," she said to Caleb. "Don't thank me yet. If they come, this gets harder." That evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Caleb and Maggie sat at the table. A single candle burned between them. He was sharpening his knife. She was mending one of Rose's dresses. Domestic tasks performed in silence. Finally, Maggie spoke. "Tell me about Turner." Caleb's hand stilled on the whetstone. "What do you want to know? Why does he hate you?" Caleb set down the knife, stared at the candle flame. "We served together. Fort Laramie, 1868. Good soldiers, both of us. Or so I thought." He paused, gathering words for something he had never spoken aloud. "Order came down to deal with a Cheyenne village. Command said they were harboring stolen property. Maybe white captives." Turner was eager. "Finally some action," he said. Maggie listened without interrupting. "I scouted ahead," Caleb continued. "Found the village. Mostly women, children, old men. The warriors were out hunting. I rode back. Told the captain what I saw. Said these weren't hostiles. They were families." "What did the captain say, Bum?" "He said orders were orders." Caleb's voice went hard. Turner backed him up. Said I was going soft. That Indians were Indians. Didn't matter if they had weapons or not. "What did you do?" "I refused the order. Said if they attacked that village, they'd do it without me." Maggie drew in a breath. She knew what that meant. Refusal of orders during wartime. Court-martial. Disgrace. "They attacked anyway," Caleb said. "Killed 17 people. Found out later there were 3 white captives there. Young women. Taken in a raid months before." "So Turner was right." "Partially." Caleb's jaw clenched. "But he didn't know for certain. And I didn't know either. We were both guessing. He guessed one way, I guessed another. You chose mercy." "I chose what felt right at the time. But those 3 women died because I stopped the attack from happening fast enough. By the time the soldiers went in, the warriors had come back. Fight broke out. Captives got killed in the crossfire." Maggie understood now. The weight Caleb carried, the way he second-guessed his own judgment. "Turner blamed you," she said. "He did. Testified at my court-martial that I was a coward, that I sympathized with the enemy. I was cleared of charges, but encouraged to resign. Turner got dishonorably discharged a year later for something else, killing prisoners. But he never forgave me. And now he's here. Now he's here." Caleb looked at her. "Wants revenge on me, wants you dead. 2 birds, 1 stone." Maggie reached across the table, placed her hand over his. The gesture was instinctive, unplanned. His fingers curled around hers. "I'm sorry," she said, "for what you've carried. I'm sorry for what you've survived." They sat like that for a long moment, hands joined, candle flickering. Then Maggie pulled back, clasped her hands in her lap. "I should tell you something," she said, "about my vows." Caleb waited. "I became a nun to escape," she said quietly. "My father arranged a marriage when I was 16, to a merchant twice my age. I ran the night before the wedding. The church took me in. I thought I was choosing freedom. Were you? I traded one cage for another." Her voice was bitter, but at least the cage had purpose. Teaching, healing, helping people. That felt like enough. Until I came here." She looked at him. "Until your daughters asked me to stay. Until you cut my ropes and said I was safe. Until I realized that I want things I'm not supposed to want." The air between them grew thick. Caleb leaned forward. "What do you want, Maggie?" She could not say it. Could not admit the desire burning in her chest, the longing for a home, for children to raise, for a man who looked at her like she mattered. For him. "I don't know," she lied. But Caleb saw through it. He always did. "I've wanted to kiss you for a week," he said quietly. "But I won't, not until you're free to choose it." Maggie's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I can be free. The church owns me." "No one owns you." His voice was fierce. You're not property, not to them, not to anyone. Then what am I? You're a woman who survived hell, who's stronger than she knows, who deserves to decide her own life. Maggie stood abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor. She moved to the window, arms wrapped around herself. I can't, she whispered. I took vows before God. Caleb stood but did not approach. Then I'll wait, however long it takes. But know this, Maggie, you belong here, not because of duty, because you choose it. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Outside, the night was full of stars. Inside, her heart was breaking and mending at the same time. The scout, 3 days passed in tense preparation. Caleb reinforced the cabin walls, checked ammunition, made sure every window could be barricaded. Maggie learned to load the rifle faster, practiced until her hands moved without thinking. The girls sensed the change. They stayed close to the cabin, spoke in whispers. Rose stopped asking to go to the creek. On the fourth morning, Caleb was checking his trap lines when he saw a movement in the trees. A young man, maybe 20, thin, nervous, watching the cabin from cover. Caleb approached from behind, silent as smoke, drew his knife and pressed it to the boy's throat before he could run. Don't move. The young man froze. Please, I don't want trouble. Then why are you watching my home? Turner sent me, but I ain't here to hurt nobody. Caleb spun him around, saw fear in the boy's eyes. Real fear, not the hardened indifference of a career criminal. What's your name? Thomas. Thomas Riggs. Why does Turner have a boy doing his scouting? Thomas swallowed. He's got my sister, Mary. Took her 3 months back. Said if I don't do what he wants, he'll hurt her. Caleb studied him, saw truth in the trembling hands, the way he could not meet Caleb's eyes. Where's Turner's camp? 6 miles west. Box Canyon. 4 men plus Turner. When's he planning to move? Oh, 2 days, maybe sooner. Thomas looked desperate. Please, mister, I got no choice. If I run, Mary dies. Caleb made a decision. He lowered the knife. You help me, I'll help you get your sister back. Thomas stared. You mean it? I don't lie to men who tell the truth. Caleb sheathed the knife. There's a trapper named Ezra Cole, 15 miles north. You find him, tell him Brennan needs help. Can you do that? What about Mary? You get me the help I need to survive what's coming. Then we'll get her. You have my word. Thomas hesitated, then nodded. He rode away fast. Caleb watched him go, hoped he had not just made a terrible mistake. When he returned to the cabin, Maggie was waiting. I saw you talking to someone. Turner's scout, name's Thomas. He's got a sister being held. Maggie's face went pale. The other nuns, from my mission, they could still be alive. Maybe. We have to find them. We will, Caleb said. But first we deal with Turner. Then we get everyone out. Maggie grabbed his arm. Promise me. Promise we'll look for them. I promise, she held his gaze. Searching for any sign of deception. Found none. Together, she said. Together. The secret. A week passed. No sign of Turner. No word from Ezra. But Maggie was changing. She woke early, vomiting behind the cabin. Tried to hide it, but Iris noticed. Miss Maggie, are you sick? Just something I ate. But it continued. Every morning, sometimes twice. Caleb finally confronted her. You need to tell me what's wrong. Maggie sat at the table, put her head in her hands. I think I'm with child. The words fell like stones into water. Caleb went very still. His mind raced through possibilities. Then understanding hit. From the raid, she nodded, could not look at him. How far along? 2 months, maybe more. I tried to deny it. Caleb sat across from her, felt rage building. Not at her, never at her, at the men who had done this, at Turner, at a world that allowed such cruelty. I understand if you want me to leave, Maggie whispered. I'm ruined, and I can't claim my vows anymore. Not like this. Stop. Caleb's voice was sharp. You're not ruined. You're a survivor. The baby came from violence, from sin. The baby is innocent, just like you. Maggie looked up, tears streaming down her face. I don't know if I can love it. Every time I think about how it came to be, I feel sick. Caleb reached across the table, took her hands in his. You don't have to decide that now. But know this, if you stay, we'll raise that child together, as ours. You would do that, raise another man's child? I'd raise your child because I care about you, because those girls upstairs love you, because you're part of this family now. The church will never release me from my vows if I'm pregnant outside marriage. Damn the church, his voice was fierce. What do you want, Maggie? Not what they want, not what I want. What do you want? She closed her eyes, tears fell faster now. I want to stay. I want to be a mother to Iris and Rose. I want to build a life here. With you. Then do it. Choose yourself for once. It's a sin. Then we'll be sinners together. She laughed through her tears, a broken, desperate sound. Caleb stood, pulled her up, wrapped his arms around her. She clung to him, sobbed into his chest, years of pain and fear and loneliness pouring out. He held her until the storm passed. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. I'll write to the diocese, she said, ask for formal release when this is over. And if they say no, then I choose you anyway. Caleb cupped her face, wiped away her tears with his thumbs. I love you, Maggie Walsh. The words hung between them. Simple, true, undeniable. I love you too, she whispered. He kissed her then, gentle, reverent, like she was something precious and fragile. When they broke apart, both were trembling. We'll survive this, Caleb said. All of us, together. Together, she agreed, the flight. That night, Maggie lay awake, listening to the girls breathe, to Caleb's soft snoring from his cot. She thought about the child growing inside her, about Turner hunting them, about the danger her presence brought to this family, and she made a decision. She rose quietly, packed a small bag, took dried meat from the stores, a knife, a canteen, slipped out into the darkness. The cold hit her immediately. Snow had started falling, just a dusting, but enough to make the ground treacherous. She walked east, away from Turner's camp, away from the cabin. If she could draw him after her, maybe Caleb and the girls would be safe. She made it 2 miles before exhaustion hit. Her legs gave out. She collapsed against a tree. The cold seeped through her thin dress. Her teeth chattered. She tried to rise. Could not. This was how she would die. Frozen in the wilderness. Alone, just like she deserved. Then she heard footsteps. Heavy, fast, coming toward her. She tried to crawl away. Her body would not obey. Strong hands grabbed her shoulders. Maggie, God damn it, woman. Caleb. She tried to speak. Her jaw was locked from cold. He stripped off his coat, wrapped it around her, lifted her like she weighed nothing. Leave me, she managed to whisper. Not a chance. He carried her through the snow, back toward the cabin. His breath came hard, but he did not slow, did not stop. By the time they reached home, Maggie was barely conscious. Caleb kicked open the door. The girls woke, terrified. Get blankets, heat water, now. They scrambled to obey. Caleb sat Maggie by the stove, rubbed her hands, her feet, brought warmth back into frozen limbs. When she could finally speak, her voice was hoarse. Why did you come? Because I love you, damn it. The words exploded out of him, raw, furious, desperate. Maggie started crying. You can't. I'm broken. I'm pregnant with another man's child. I bring nothing but danger. I don't care. Caleb knelt in front of her. I love you, all of you, the baby included. Your daughters deserve better than me. Iris stepped forward. The girl's voice was small but certain. We want you to stay, Miss Maggie. We don't care about the baby. We'll love it too. Rose nodded, already crying. Please don't leave again. Maggie looked at these 2 children, at this man, at the family she had found, and surrendered. I'm sorry, she whispered. I was trying to protect you. We protect each other, Caleb said. That's what family does. Family. The word tasted strange in her mouth. Foreign, wonderful. Caleb pulled her close. The girls joined them, all 4 wrapped together in blankets and firelight. For the first time since the raid destroyed her world, Maggie felt safe. Not because danger had passed, but because she was not facing it alone. The warning. Morning came with hoofbeats. Thomas rode hard into the yard. His horse was lathered. His face was pale. Caleb stepped out, rifle in hand. "What is it?" "Ezra's coming," Thomas gasped. "With 3 men. But Turner knows." "Knows what?" "That you're getting help. He moved up the attack." Caleb's blood went cold. "And when tomorrow, dawn," Maggie appeared in the doorway, heard everything. "Then we prepare," she said quietly. Caleb looked at her, at the determination in her eyes, at the way she stood straight despite everything. "We prepare," he agreed. Thomas dismounted. "There's something else about my sister." "What about her?" The boy's voice broke. "I heard Turner talking. He sold her 2 months ago to a mining camp in Montana. I don't even know if she's alive." Maggie put a hand on his shoulder. "We'll find her. After this is done. I promise." Thomas nodded, could not speak. Caleb organized them quickly. Ezra and his men would arrive by nightfall. That gave them 1 day to prepare. They worked through the afternoon, boarding windows, setting traps in the woods, creating false positions to confuse attackers. Maggie set up a medical station. Boiled water, prepared bandages, loaded ammunition. The girls stayed in the root cellar, learning to be quiet, to wait, to survive. As the sun set, 4 riders appeared on the horizon. Ezra had come, and he brought help. Samuel, a former soldier, Dutch, an ex-miner, Running Fox, a Shoshone scout. Men who knew how to fight, who knew what was at stake. They gathered in the cabin. Caleb laid out the situation. "Turner has 5 men. We have 7, but he'll hit at dawn when we're tired. We need to be ready." Running Fox studied the map Caleb had drawn. "He'll come from the west, sun at his back." "Can we flank him?" Samuel asked. "Maybe." Caleb pointed to the barn. "Running Fox, you take position there. Dutch, you cover the south side. Samuel, you're with me on the porch. Ezra, you float. Fill gaps." "What about me?" Maggie asked. "You stay inside, protect the girls, reload weapons." "I can shoot." "I know you can." Caleb met her eyes. "But if we fall, you're the last line. Understand?" She understood. That night, no one slept. They sat in darkness, weapons ready, hearts pounding, waiting for war. And somewhere in the hills, Turner and his men prepared to descend. The final battle was coming. Blood would be spilled, and not everyone would survive to see the sunrise. Dawn approached like a predator, slow, inevitable, patient. Caleb stood on the porch rifle cradled in his arms. The air carried that peculiar stillness that comes before violence. No birds sang, no wind moved through the pines. Even the horses in the corral stood motionless, ears pricked toward the western ridge. Behind him, the cabin door opened. Maggie stepped out wrapped in a shawl against the cold. Her face was pale but composed. She had braided her hair back. Practical. Ready. "The girls are in the cellar," she said quietly. "Iris knows what to do if we fall." "We won't fall." "Caleb," she touched his arm, "if something happens to you, I need to know where the deed is, where the important papers are kept." He looked at her, saw the determination beneath the fear. This woman who had survived a massacre, who had learned to shoot in a week, who carried a child conceived in violence but chose to stay anyway. "Trunk beside my cot," he said. "Deed some money, a letter to my brother in Missouri. He'll help you and the girls get settled. I won't need it because you're going to survive this." Maggie listened to Mom. He set down the rifle, took both her hands. "If I don't make it, you take the girls and you run. Don't look back. Don't try to be a hero. Just get them safe. And the baby, that baby is yours, no one else's. You raise it how you see fit, but you make sure it knows it was wanted, that it was loved." Maggie's eyes filled with tears. She stepped closer, rose on her toes, kissed him. It was not the gentle kiss from before. This was fierce, desperate, the kiss of 2 people who might not see another sunrise. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Come back to me," she whispered. "I'll try." "Don't try, do it." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Yes, ma'am." Footsteps approached. Ezra emerged from the barn chewing tobacco. Behind him came Samuel Dutch and Running Fox, men who had seen battle before, who knew what was coming. "Sun's about an hour from rising," Ezra said. "If Turner's smart, he'll wait for full light. Hit us when we're tired from standing watch all night. And if he's not smart, Samuel asked, then he comes in the dark and we shoot at shadows. Running Fox crouched, studying the ground. The Shoshone scout's face was unreadable. 3 riders approached in the night, circled the property, went back west. Final reconnaissance, Caleb said, counting us, looking for weaknesses. Did they find any? Dutch asked. Caleb met his eyes. We're about to find out. They took their positions. Running Fox disappeared into the barn loft. Dutch moved to the south corner of the cabin. Samuel crouched behind the water trough. Ezra positioned himself near the corral with a clear line of sight to the western approach. Caleb returned to the porch. Maggie went inside but stayed near the door. Close enough to hear, close enough to help if needed. The waiting was the hardest part. Minutes stretched like hours. The sky shifted from black to deep blue. Stars faded. The eastern horizon began to glow. Then from the west movement, 6 riders came over the ridge. Not rushing, not hiding, just riding at a steady pace like men who had all the time in the world. Turner led them. Even at a distance, Caleb recognized the set of his shoulders, the way he sat his horse. Arrogant, certain of victory. Behind Turner rode Boyd, his lieutenant, a man known for cruelty even among cruel men. Then came Dutch Pete, an older killer with dead eyes. Ramon, a Mexican gunman with a reputation. Sykes, a knife fighter. And bringing up the rear looking sick with fear was Thomas Riggs. Caleb's jaw tightened. The boy had been forced back, probably threatened with his sister's death again. No choice but to comply. The riders stopped 200 yards out, just beyond rifle range, close enough to talk, too far to rush without warning. Turner dismounted, stood in his stirrups, called out, "Brennan, I know you're in there." Caleb did not answer. Let him wonder. "Don't be shy now. We've come a long way for this conversation." Still nothing. Turner's voice took on an edge. "You remember Fort Laramie, 1868, the Cheyenne village." Caleb felt cold settle in his gut. He had known this was coming, but hearing it spoken aloud brought everything back. The smell of smoke, the screaming, the bodies in the snow. "You thought you were being noble," Turner shouted, "refusing to attack, but you know what you really did." Silence from the cabin. "You cost 3 lives, Brennan, 3 white women, captives being held in that village. We went in to rescue them, and you stopped us." By the time we got organized again, the warriors had come back. Fight broke out. Those women died in the crossfire. Maggie stood behind the door, listening, watching Caleb's face. "That's not how it happened," she said quietly. "Isn't it?" Caleb's voice was hollow. "I don't know anymore. I thought I was doing right, but maybe I was just a coward." "You're not a coward." She moved to stand beside him. "He's trying to make you doubt yourself. Don't let him." But the seed was planted. Caleb felt it growing, the old wound reopening. Turner kept talking. "Those 3 dead settlers, their blood is on your hands, not mine. You and your high-minded principles, you got people killed." Samuel shifted behind the water trough, looked at Caleb, waiting for orders. Caleb raised a hand. "Not yet." "I've thought about that day every night for 8 years. Turner's voice cracked with emotion. Real or fake, Caleb could not tell. Those women screaming as the bullets hit them. "And you know whose fault it was? Yours, for stopping a legitimate rescue operation." Ezra spat tobacco juice. "He's full of horse shit." "Maybe," Caleb said. "Or maybe he's right." "Don't matter now," Ezra replied. "What's done is done. Focus on what's in front of you." But Caleb's hands had started shaking, not from fear, from doubt. The worst kind of poison for a fighting man. Turner saw the hesitation, smiled. "Tell you what, Brennan, let's settle this clean. You give me the nun, I ride away. Your girls stay safe, nice and simple." "No deal." Caleb's voice was steady despite the turmoil inside. "Then we do this the hard way." Turner raised his hand. His men spread out, forming a line, preparing to charge. Caleb leveled his rifle. "First man who moves gets shot." Turner laughed. "You won't shoot me, Brennan. You're too much of a coward, just like at Fort Laramie. Try me." The standoff stretched. Tension built like a storm about to break. Then everything went wrong at once. The taking a scream came from inside the cabin, Rose's voice, high and terrified. Caleb spun around. Maggie! No answer. He lunged for the door. Too late. Sykes emerged from the cabin holding Iris. The knife fighter had her by the hair blade pressed to her throat. The girl's eyes were wide with fear, but she did not struggle. Smart child. Knew that movement meant death. No, Maggie appeared behind them, face white. Let her go, Sykes grinned, missing teeth, breath that stank even from a distance. Found a way in through your cellar. Ain't security what it used to be. Caleb's world narrowed to a single point. His daughter. The knife. The man holding her. Turner's voice rang out triumphant. See how easy that was. Now we can negotiate properly. Sykes dragged Iris toward the yard. She stumbled, but kept her footing. Brave girl. So brave. Pa, she said quietly. It's okay. I'm okay. But her voice shook. Caleb aimed his rifle at Sykes. Let her go or I will kill you where you stand. Go ahead and try, Sykes said. But this blade moves faster than bullets. She'll bleed out before you can reload. Turner walked his horse closer, still out of rifle range but near enough that Caleb could see his face clearly. The scar across his eyebrow, the missing half of his pinky finger. The smile of a man who thinks he's won. Here's the new deal, Turner said. You give me the nun, I give you the girl. Everyone walks away. No, Caleb said. Then I tell Sykes to cut her throat. Iris whimpered, the knife pressed harder. A thin line of blood appeared on her neck. Wait, Maggie pushed past Caleb, stood in the doorway. Take me instead. Let the girl go. Maggie, no. Caleb reached her for her. She pulled away, stepped into the yard, hands raised. I'm the one you want, she said to Turner. I saw you kill Sister Catherine. I can testify, so take me. Leave this family alone. Turner studied her, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. Sykes released the girl when the nun reaches halfway. Maggie walked forward, each step measured, deliberate. She did not look back at Caleb. If she did, she might lose her courage. When she reached the middle of the yard, Sykes shoved Iris away. The girl ran to her father, sobbing. Caleb caught her, pulled her close. Then Sykes grabbed Maggie, twisted her arm behind her back. She gasped in pain but did not cry out. Turner dismounted, walked up to her, looked her over like livestock. Finally, he said, thought you'd hide behind mountain men forever, sister. I saw you murder her, Maggie said. I'll tell everyone what you did. Not if you're dead. He backhanded her across the face. She fell. Blood ran from her split lip. Caleb raised his rifle. Finger on the trigger. Easy, Ezra whispered. Wait for the shot. But before anyone could fire, movement came from the tree line. Thomas Riggs rode into view. His face was pale. His hands shook on the reins. Turner, he called out. I found something. The other trappers' camp. North Ridge. Just like you wanted. Turner turned. About time, boy. Where? Thomas pointed. 3 miles. They don't know we spotted them. Turner looked at Boyd. Take Ramon. Check it out. Boyd nodded. He and the Mexican gunman rode north. That left 4. Turner, Sykes, Dutch, Pete, and Thomas. Better odds. Still not good. Thomas dismounted, walked toward Turner. His hand drifted toward his belt. There's something else, Thomas said quietly. What? Thomas drew a pistol, pointed it at Turner's head. Where's my sister? Time stopped. Turner stared at the gun, then started laughing. Your sister, Mary. Where is she? Dead boy. Sold her 2 months back to a mining camp in Butte. She didn't last a week. Tough life for a girl who won't cooperate. Thomas's face crumpled. You said if I helped you, you'd let her go. I lied. Turner's voice was casual, indifferent. People do that. You killed her. She killed herself, fighting when she should have accepted her lot. Thomas pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing. The gun misfired or had been sabotaged. Thomas stared at it in horror. Turner drew faster, shot Thomas through the chest. The boy fell backward, hit the ground hard. Blood spread across his shirt in a widening pool. Maggie screamed. Caleb used the distraction, fired at Dutch Pete, caught him in the shoulder. The old killer went down cursing. Sykes released Maggie, drew his knife, charged at Caleb. Running Fox shot from the barn. Arrow took Sykes in the leg. The knife fighter stumbled, fell. Samuel rose from behind the water trough, aimed at Turner, but Turner was already moving. grabbed Maggie again, used her as a shield, started dragging her toward the horses. "You want her," Turner shouted. "Come and take her." Caleb vaulted off the porch, ran straight at Turner, no thought. No strategy, just pure rage. Turner released Maggie, drew his knife, waited. They collided like thunder. The reckoning. Caleb and Turner hit the ground in a tangle of limbs and fury, 30 years of history channeled into fists and knees and elbows. They rolled through the dirt, each trying to gain advantage, neither giving ground. Turner was bigger, stronger, but Caleb was faster, driven by something beyond mere survival. He was fighting for his daughters, for Maggie, for the life he had built from ashes and loss. Turner drove a knee into Caleb's ribs. Bone cracked. Pain exploded through his side. Caleb gasped but did not let go. Grabbed Turner's wrist, twisted hard. The knife fell from Turner's grip. They separated, scrambled to their feet, circled like wolves. Blood ran from Caleb's nose. His ribs screamed with every breath, but his eyes were clear, focused. Turner's lip was split. His left eye was swelling shut. He grinned through broken teeth. "Should have stayed in the mountains, Brennan. This is soldier's work." "I'm no soldier anymore." "No, you're just a coward who hides behind children." Caleb rushed him. Turner sidestepped, drove an elbow into Caleb's back, sent him sprawling. Maggie grabbed the fallen rifle, tried to aim, but they were moving too fast, too close. She could not risk the shot. Turner kicked Caleb in the ribs. The cracked bones shifted. Caleb cried out, rolled away. Turner followed, relentless. "Those women at Fort Laramie, they begged for help, and you stopped us from saving them." Caleb got to his knees, spat blood. "Maybe, but I'm not that man anymore." "No, then what are you?" "A man who knows mercy is stronger than revenge." Turner laughed. "Mercy, is that what you call letting people die?" "I call it learning from my mistakes." Caleb surged up, caught Turner off guard, drove his fist into the other man's throat. Turner gagged, stumbled backward. Caleb pressed the advantage. Another punch and another, driving Turner back step by step. Then Turner's hand found the knife. He came up swinging. The blade caught Caleb across the forearm. Shallow but painful. Blood flowed. Caleb grabbed Turner's wrist with both hands, held the knife away. They strained against each other, faces inches apart. "You're weak," Turner hissed. "Always were." "Maybe, but I'm still standing." With a roar, Caleb twisted, used Turner's momentum against him, threw him to the ground, landed on top, pinned his arms. The knife lay between them. Caleb could grab it. End this, one thrust through the throat. Justice for Sister Catherine, for Thomas, for every woman Turner had trafficked and killed. His hand moved toward the blade. Turner saw his death coming. "Do it then. Prove you're a killer like me." Caleb's fingers closed around the handle, raised it high. Maggie's voice cut through the rage. "Caleb, no." He froze. Looked at her. She stood 10 feet away, rifle lowered, eyes full of tears. "Don't become him," she said quietly. "Please, don't let him turn you into what he is." Caleb looked down at Turner, at the fear finally showing in the other man's eyes, at the pathetic broken thing he had become, and threw the knife away. It landed in the dirt 20 feet distant. Turner stared. "What are you doing, choosing mercy?" Caleb stood, pulled Turner to his feet. "You're going to Fort Bridger. You're going to stand trial. And you're going to tell everyone what you did. You're a fool." "Probably." Caleb twisted Turner's arms behind his back, bound them with rope. "But I can live with myself." Ezra walked over. Dutch Pete was tied and bleeding. Sykes was unconscious from blood loss. Boyd and Ramon had not returned. Probably rode off when they saw the fight going badly. "What about the boy?" Ezra asked. Maggie knelt beside Thomas. The young man was still breathing. Barely. Blood bubbled from his lips. She took his hand. "Thomas, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open. "Did we win?" "Yes, you helped us win." "Mary," Maggie's throat tightened. "I'm sorry, she's gone." Tears ran down Thomas's face. "Tell my mother I tried. Tell her I tried to do right at the end." "I will. I promise, Vicky." His breathing grew shallower, each breath a struggle. "Miss Maggie." "Yes." "Am I going to hell for the things I did?" She squeezed his hand. No, sweetheart. You're going home. Thomas smiled, a small, peaceful smile. Then his breathing stopped. Maggie closed his eyes, said a prayer over his body, wept for a boy who never had a chance. Caleb came to stand beside her, put a hand on her shoulder. He died trying to save his sister, Caleb said quietly. That counts for something. Does it? Maggie looked up at him. He's still dead. But he died with honor. That's more than most men get. They buried Thomas that afternoon. Behind the cabin near a stand of pines, Maggie carved a cross from wood, said the prayer she remembered from her days at the convent. The girls stood nearby, holding hands, learning that sometimes doing the right thing still ends in loss. Turner and the wounded men were loaded onto horses. Ezra and Samuel would take them to Fort Bridger. 3 days' ride. Let the army sort it out. Before they left, Turner looked at Caleb one last time. You could have killed me. I know. Why didn't you? Caleb met his eyes. Because I'm not you, and I never will be. Turner had no answer for that. They rode away, leaving Caleb, Maggie, and the girls standing in the yard of a cabin that had survived its first real test. The priest, 6 weeks passed. The cabin settled back into routine. Caleb repaired the damage. Maggie tended the garden. The girls slowly stopped flinching at loud noises. Word came from Fort Bridger. Turner had been tried and sentenced to hang. Dutch Pete got 20 years. Sykes died of his wounds on the journey. Boyd and Ramon were never found, justice of a sort. But Maggie's situation remained unresolved. She was visibly pregnant now, 4 months along. The child moved inside her, kicked and turned, a life growing despite its violent origin. She still wore black, still prayed, but differently now, with less guilt, more gratitude. Then one afternoon, a rider appeared on the Eastern Trail, an older man in priest clothing, riding a sturdy mule. A wooden cross hung around his neck. Caleb met him at the fence, hand on his rifle, wary. Can I help you, Father? The priest dismounted. He was perhaps 50, Irish accent still thick despite years in America. Kind eyes set in a weathered face. I'm Father Patrick O'Brien, from the diocese in Salt Lake City. I'm looking for Sister Margaret Walsh. Caleb's blood went cold. Why? She's missed her required correspondence for 3 months. The bishop sent me to check on her welfare. Before Caleb could respond, Maggie appeared on the porch. She saw the priest, went pale. Father O'Brien. The priest smiled gently. Sister Margaret, thank God you're alive. We heard about the raid, feared the worst. I survived. So I see. His eyes took in her condition, the swell of her belly beneath the simple dress. No judgment showed on his face, just sadness. May I come in? We should talk. Inside the cabin, Maggie told him everything. The attack, the captivity, the escape, Caleb's rescue, the growing feelings, the pregnancy, the choice to stay. Father O'Brien listened without interruption. When she finished, he sat in silence for a long moment. I've broken my vows, Maggie said. I know what that means, but I want to be released from them formally. I want to marry this man, raise these children, build a life here. And the child you carry will be raised with love, regardless of how it came to be. The priest nodded slowly. The church is not without mercy, sister. Your vows were taken freely, but circumstances have changed you in ways no one could have foreseen. So you'll grant dispensation. The pregnancy from assault releases you from the celibacy vow automatically. You were violated. That sin is not yours to carry. As for obedience, your vow was to vow not to suffering. He reached into his satchel, pulled out a folded document. I brought this hoping I might find you alive. It's a formal release from your vows, signed by the bishop himself. All it needs is your signature. Maggie stared at the paper. Freedom, written in ink and sealed with wax. Why, she whispered, why would the bishop grant this? Because he's a good man who believes God's love is larger than church law. And because I wrote to him about your situation, told him what you survived, recommended mercy. Tears ran down Maggie's face. Thank you. Father O'Brien placed the paper on the table, set a pen beside it. One more thing. The other sisters from your mission, We found two of them. They're recovering at Fort Bridger. They asked about you. Maggie's hand flew to her mouth. They're alive. Sister Ann and Sister Teresa, they want to see you when you're ready. I'll go soon. The priest stood. Then I'll perform one more service before I leave, if you'll have me. What service? A wedding, unless you'd rather wait. Caleb and Maggie looked at each other. Both smiled. No, Maggie said. We've waited long enough. The vow, they married that evening, as the sun set behind the western ridge. It was a simple ceremony, no church, no congregation, just family. Iris and Rose stood as witnesses, wearing their best dresses, holding wildflowers they had picked that morning. Ezra had returned from Fort Bridger just in time. He stood beside Caleb, grinning like a fool. Maggie wore a dress borrowed from Ezra's wife. Simple blue cotton. Her hair was braided with white ribbon. She looked beautiful. Caleb wore his cleanest shirt, combed his hair, tried not to shake. Father O'Brien opened his prayer book, but before he could speak, Caleb raised a hand. Father, if it's all right, I'd like to say my own vows. The priest smiled. Of course. Caleb turned to Maggie, took her hands. I, Caleb Brennan, choose you, Margaret Walsh, not because the church says I should, not because it's proper, but because you make me better than I am, because you are brave and strong and kind, because my daughters love you, because I love you, and I will love you until the day I die. Maggie was crying, happy tears this time. I, Margaret Walsh, choose you, Caleb Brennan. You saved me when I was lost, gave me a home when I had none, showed me that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choice. I choose you. I choose your daughters. I choose this life, forever. Father O'Brien blessed them. Then by the power vested in me by God and the territory of Wyoming, I pronounce you husband and wife. Caleb kissed her, long and deep, while the girls giggled and Ezra hooted. When they broke apart, both were laughing. That night they celebrated. Ezra's wife had brought food. Dutch made music with a battered fiddle. Running Fox told stories that made the girls wide-eyed. And for the first time in years, Caleb felt complete. He had a wife, daughters, a home worth defending, a future worth building. The past still haunted him. It always would, but it no longer defined him. He was not the man who failed at Fort Laramie. He was the man who chose mercy over revenge, love over duty, family over fear. And that was enough. The harvest. 6 months later, spring came to the Wyoming mountains. The snows melted, green shoots pushed through dark earth, birds returned, life renewed itself. Maggie's time came on a warm April morning. She had been feeling contractions since dawn. Tried to hide them, wanted to finish the day's work first. Stubborn woman. But by midday, the pains were too strong to ignore. Ezra's wife Clara came to help. She was a midwife, had delivered half the children in the territory. Caleb paced outside, helpless, terrified. Memories of Sarah's death flooding back. The fever, the blood, the way she had looked at him at the end, knowing she was dying, apologizing for leaving him alone. Iris sat beside him, took his hand. Maggie's strong pa. She'll be fine. Your mother was strong too. Maggie's not mama, she's different. Caleb looked at his daughter. When had she become so wise? Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. Then finally a cry, not Maggie's cry, a baby's. Caleb stood frozen, afraid to hope. Claire appeared in the doorway, smiling. It's a girl, healthy, good lungs. And Maggie, tired, but fine. She wants to see you. Caleb entered the cabin on shaking legs. Maggie lay in bed, exhausted, hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, but alive, smiling. In her arms, wrapped in a clean blanket, was a tiny child. Dark hair, eyes squeezed shut, fists waving. Come meet your daughter, Maggie said softly. Caleb approached, looked down at the baby. This child conceived in violence, born into love. She's perfect, he whispered. What should we name her? Caleb thought about the woman who had protected Maggie, who had died so others might live. Catherine, he said, after Sister Catherine. Maggie's eyes filled with tears. Yes, Catherine Brennan. The baby yawned, settled into sleep. Iris and Rose crowded in, wanting to see their new sister. They touched her tiny hands with reverent care. "She's so small," Rose whispered. "You were smaller," Caleb said. "Can I hold her?" Maggie nodded. "Sit down first." Rose sat. Maggie placed Catherine in her arms. The 6-year-old's face transformed with wonder. "Hi, Catherine. I'm your big sister. I'm going to teach you everything." Iris stroked the baby's head. "We both will." Caleb watched his family. 3 daughters now. A wife he loved. A home that had survived fire and blood. This was what he had been missing. What Sarah's death had stolen from him. Not just a partner, but purpose, connection, a reason to keep going. "Thank you," he said to Maggie. "For what? For staying, for choosing us, for making this family whole again." She reached for his hand. "You saved me first." "No, we saved each other." Outside, spring rain began to fall, gentle, nourishing, washing away the last remnants of a hard winter. Inside, a family slept, together, safe, complete. The war was over, the healing had begun, and in the shadow of the Wyoming mountains, broken people had built something that would last. Not because of blood, but because of choice. Epilogue. The legacy. The fire had burned down to embers. Caleb, now 68, finished his story. His voice was hoarse from talking, his whiskey cup long empty. Across from him, James sat transfixed. The boy had forgotten his fear, forgotten the war waiting for him, lost in a tale of courage and love and second chances. "What happened to everyone?" James asked. Caleb smiled. "Iris married Samuel's son. They have 4 children, run a ranch near Fort Bridger. And Rose married Running Fox. They live on the Shoshone Reservation, teaching children, bridging worlds. And Catherine," Caleb's smile widened. "Catherine became a teacher, like her mother. She's married now, has 2 children of her own, strong woman, looks like Maggie, has her spirit." "And Grandma Maggie, how long did she live?" The smile faded. "She passed last year. Just shy of 70. She was surrounded by family. Died peaceful. No pain." James saw the grief still fresh on his grandfather's face. "You loved her very much." "Every day, for 30 years, and I'll love her until I see her again." They sat in comfortable silence. The fire popped. Wind rattled the windows. Finally, James stood. "I should sleep. Train comes early." Caleb rose too, pulled something from his pocket. A small knife. The one he had used to cut Maggie's ropes 3 decades ago. "She wanted you to have this." James took it reverently. "Why me?" "Because you're going to war. Because you're scared. Because she wanted you to remember that freedom is worth fighting for. But mercy is worth fighting for too." "I don't understand." "You will. When the moment comes, you'll remember this story, and you'll choose wisely." James hugged his grandfather, long and tight. "Thank you for telling me. Thank you for listening." The next morning, Caleb took James to the train station. They stood on the platform. The locomotive hissed steam. Soldiers in new uniforms climbed aboard. James turned back one last time. "Grandpa, do you think I'll be brave?" "You'll be terrified, but you'll do what needs doing. That's all bravery is." "What if I make the wrong choice, like you did at Fort Laramie?" Caleb gripped his shoulder. "Then you learn from it. You make the next choice better. That's all any of us can do." The whistle blew. James climbed aboard, found a window seat, looked out. Caleb stood on the platform, watching the train pull away, carrying his grandson toward an uncertain future. He stayed until the train disappeared from sight, then walked home slowly. Every step an effort now. Age had caught up with him at last. He stopped at the cemetery on the edge of town, found the grave marked with a simple stone. Margaret Brennan, 1843-1901. Beloved wife, mother, friend, she chose love. He placed wildflowers on the marker, the same kind Rose used to pick for her. "I told him our story, Maggie, just like you asked. Hope I did it justice." The wind whispered through the pines. Maybe an answer, maybe just wind. "Miss you every day, but I'll see you soon enough. Wait for me." He turned to go, paused, looked back. "We did good, didn't we, with the girls, with Catherine, with all of it." The wind again, gentle this time. like a hand on his shoulder. Caleb smiled. Yeah, we did good. He walked home through the Montana afternoon, the same mountains he and Maggie had crossed together so many years ago, when they were young and broken and finding their way. 3 years later, Caleb Brennan died in his sleep, hand-clutching Maggie's rosary, the one she had given up when she left the church. His funeral was attended by 3 generations, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. All of them gathered to honor the mountain man who had chosen mercy. And when they lowered him into the ground beside the woman who had once been a nun, someone started singing, an old Irish hymn Maggie used to sing to the babies. The voices rose together, family bound not by blood but by choice. And in the shadow of the mountains, the story passed into legend. The mountain man and the nun, the rescue, the siege, the love that defied every law except the law of the heart. James Brennan survived the war, came home, had children, told them the story his grandfather had told him, and they told their children. And those children told theirs, until it became more than memory, it became truth. That broken people can heal, that mercy is stronger than revenge, that family is what you choose, not what you're given, and that sometimes the most unlikely love stories are the ones that last forever. Not because they were easy, but because they were worth fighting for.